we go. Let's just go to Facebook. All right, ready for this?
Let's go.
Okay. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Going live. All right. Starting. All right. Well, it's officially fall. It's sweater weather. Apples, pumpkins, you name it. You've probably already gone apple picking. Greg Johnson, our general manager here, has already made his 12 million jars of applesauce. We got hurricanes, politics, and port strikes, not to mention. But how does all this affect you as a consumer trying to buy a vehicle? Well, here at Mohawk Honda and Mohawk Auto Group, we want to show you and give you all the necessary tools. And that's why we're making this brand new series called Mohawk Table Talk with the resident expert, Mike O'Toole. I'm so excited to start this podcast.
I love it. Thanks, Nate. I'm really excited about this. This actually stemmed from a number of company meetings that we had. I know our staff loves hearing about some of the stuff that's going on in the car business. Sometimes they like hearing about it. It's usually good. And even if it's bad, we still want to know. And we realized, hey, there are probably people that don't work here that also want to know what's going on in the car business.
Absolutely.
So I love the fact that we're bringing back Table Talk.
Well, I know that there's so many people out there that always have questions. You know, they don't do this every day. And like, okay, well, now there's a hurricane. So now what do I have to worry about? Do I have to worry about Mohawk Honda buying flooded cars or politics? Like, if I'm going to buy an EV, is my tax going to be taken away? You know, there's all these things that are coming down the pipeline, and we want to make sure that you as the customer understand what's going on, and we'll keep you up to date here every week, Tuesday. And it was a little late today. We had a little technical difficulties, but we're going to try for 12:30 every Tuesday to kind of give a recap of the week and give you all an understanding of what you should be looking for when you're going to go buy a vehicle.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of stuff going on. We were talking off camera, and there's an unbelievable amount of things that have happened, especially in the last 60 days. So we're going to give you a recap on exactly what that means to you, what that means to the business, and how we can move forward.
Yeah. Well, let's get started into it. Obviously, we'll start with something fun, and that's fall foliage.
Oh, love it.
It's peak leaf peeping season across the New York State. So if you haven't yet, make sure you go out there. I was checking out some of the prime real estate, going up to the Adirondacks. Actually, this was very interesting to me, is that there's already places in the Adirondacks that it's bad to go leaf peep.
Really?
Yeah.
Bad. Who could imagine that?
We're
in the middle of October. It's perfect.
What I noticed is towards the 70 higher up in the center of New York, up in the Adirondacks towards the center. So if you're going towards the peak, in the center of that peak, it kind of already is spreading out.
Yeah,
it's
that's true.
It starts here and then it kind of goes out towards all the things. Right now for us is actually peak leaf peeping season. So for everybody out there, make sure you get there's not much time left to go take a look at all of the beautiful colors that are coming our way.
That's true. And anybody who hasn't been apple picking yet, or even been near an orchard, this is the prime time, right? Would you say you're more of a cider donut kind of guy, or more of a pumpkin kind of guy?
Ooh, I'm definitely a cider donut kind of guy. I love my cider donuts. And typically, you know, I actually went apple picking earlier this season.
Okay.
I've never gone that early. I went in September, and we're like, oh, the apples we actually want aren't in season. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. What is this? So it's definitely peak fall time at the moment.
Absolutely. But the good news is any apples you get are good for pies, crisp, and all that stuff. So bring that on. I love that.
And always open to try new things.
Absolutely.
So let's go. Let's move on down. For anyone out there, Mohawk Trunk or Treat for Chevrolet and Honda is coming up on the 27th from 11 to 2 at both of our stores. So I want to make sure that all of our events get pushed into this live stream so people know what's going on. So make sure you're coming out with your kids, with your family, bring everybody here at Mohawk Honda from 11 to 2, and the same at Mohawk Chevrolet, 11 to 2. And hey, if you're going to be at the Schenectady Parade, you're going to see a massive float by Mohawk Auto Group. Everyone's putting their minds together. I forget how long
It's the holiday parade, right?
The holiday
parade, yeah.
Holiday parade in Schenectady. I think our float is going to be like 60 feet long. I don't even know at this point. We're going to have, I don't know. Just stay tuned for that. But those are some of the things that we got coming up.
Yeah, please check that out. You, for those of you that aren't Mohawk employees, you wouldn't believe the competitiveness that we have here to try to make it as bigger and better like than last year. Every year.
Well, we had 3 different floats. And now we're like, why are we doing this? Let's just put them all together.
Yep, exactly.
So take a look as we make our way through the Schenectady Parade.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be a great time. It seems like fall just started. It's going to be over before we know it. We're going to be into the season of thanks and then right into the holiday season. So it's coming quickly.
Speaking of thanks, I'm thankful that we live up here in New York State where we don't really get hurricanes that often, or if any. I don't think I've ever seen a hurricane.
Not that I can remember.
But for the unfortunate Floridians and lower states that have been affected, huge hurricanes have come through, Milton and Helene. So what does that look like for us as a dealership? What are we seeing? What are some of the things that we can be cautious of?
Yeah, they're certainly important. And of course, our thoughts and prayers go out to anybody affected, whether you were in that storm's path or have loved ones or anybody really. I'll give you the quick rundown on what that means. Yeah. So not to get too serious on you here, but it's super important that everybody understand exactly what that means to Mohawk, the Mohawk family, and the car business in general. So just to kind of set the dates now, it's October 15th, 2024 today, right? 15 days into the fourth quarter. So Hurricane Helene, now that came through the southern states, right? The Gulf Coast of Florida and up through the Gulf there on October 26th. So we're only a couple weeks since then. There was some significant devastation all the way up through some of the central states, which you probably know, into Tennessee, and even some states that aren't not bordered on the Gulf received significant damage. So in terms of how that affects the car business, certainly there were a lot of losses in terms of vehicles and unfortunately some life and some property. But as it relates to the auto business, there were a lot of vehicles that were lost during that time.
Yeah.
So
do you have any stats on how many vehicles?
Yeah, the numbers and only estimates. The estimates from NADA were that there were upwards of 1 million vehicles lost between the two storms. So that's a lot of vehicles.
1 million vehicles? And
when we talk about losses, we're talking about damage, obviously. Damage would include flood, like actually water level or anything else that could have happened from the damage that the storms caused. So that leaves a big void of people and businesses that need transportation.
That's
right?
Crazy.
So not only do those vehicles have to make their way through the recovery process and the insurance claim process, but there's a significant backlog on vehicles that are needed in those areas. So, so that's a big deal. I can't even imagine that amount of vehicles.
Yeah, so I mean, if we're losing an estimated 1 million cars, right, how much more stress, I'm putting quotations on the manufacturers,
right,
to pump out more vehicles? Or because I don't think I've ever seen anything. I'm fairly new to the car industry. How long have you been in?
28 years.
28 years. So you've probably seen a flood or two.
I have, but nothing like this.
Nothing like
this.
So what typically happens for a scenario like this where these cars are being flooded? What happens to these cars?
So the process is relatively lengthy, and just to kind of condense the explanation. So what will happen, of course, and you'll know if you're somebody who was affected or had a vehicle that was affected, the vehicle needs to go through, most of the time it's an insurance claim process, right? So you have a loss. In most cases, we hear about collision damage, right? If you had a collision, but in this case, it's a flood. We all know that as water is an enemy of a vehicle,
Yes.
engine, transmission, and things like that. So as that flood rises and it covers those parts of your vehicle, that vehicle is not recoverable, right?
Yeah.
You can't fix that vehicle, can't dry it out or anything like that. It's not like anything else. So that has to go through a claims process with an insurance company. Now, the insurance companies, as you can imagine, with 1 million or more claims, are just inundated, and the time factor is even longer than usual in terms of getting those claims settled. But once the claim is settled, the person who owned the vehicle or the company that owned the vehicle
Right.
will then be paid the amount of that vehicle, and it would be considered
Okay.
a total loss.
Okay, yep.
So that total loss vehicle is then sold to salvage or scrap yards, and the vehicle's not in circulation anymore. So it's not in operation anymore.
No, it kind of makes me think of like all of the classic cars that people might have had down there.
Yeah,
Now all
Ooh.
those like collector's items cars just gone.
Absolutely.
Just like, it kind of hurts my heart, thinking about all those cars gone.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow, but even tougher would be if somebody's using it for daily transportation, right?
Yes,
You got to get to work,
absolutely.
you got to get the kids around or whatever. It's a tough scenario. So just to kind of move forward in that process, right? That person or that company then needs a replacement vehicle.
Right.
So like you mentioned, like Nate mentioned, there's a demand. There's now an increased demand all of a sudden.
Huge demand.
Normally, demand is kind of increased over time, but this is immediate. So that's normally filled by locality in terms of geography. Local states can supply vehicles to that area in terms of sale.
Right.
Normally, if there's an insurance claim and somebody then has funds to be able to replace that vehicle, they're then replacing that by acquiring it elsewhere. Or the local dealers who also incurred losses are receiving an influx of inventory from the manufacturer,
okay.
right? So our sister companies, right, are Honda, we're at Mohawk Honda, so the Honda stores that were affected in that area, those vehicles are all gone due to loss, but they do get a supplemental inventory right from Honda themselves, which is nice.
So I wonder if, and this is pure speculation, no idea, do you think that manufacturers have reservoir of vehicles in case these things happen, and then when they start to make more, they're like, okay, now we have to get rid of these. Now because there's been times where they're like, hey, we're going to give you 27 of these vehicles. We're like, we don't really want these vehicles, but we'll take them, right?
That's right.
I wonder if they do that.
Sure, I'll give you a couple stats on that note in terms of how Honda performs, and this is relevant to what might be available to those states in terms of hurricane relief. So Honda sells and delivers about 120,000 vehicles nationwide every month. That's 120,000 new Hondas delivered nationwide. Wow. Now, the production, in terms of if you think about the cars that aren't delivered yet, that aren't at dealers, there's usually at least a 60-day window of what they produce before they get to the dealers. So if you do that math real quickly, that's over 250,000 vehicles that are in process that haven't got to dealers yet. So I wouldn't say it's easy by any means. I can't imagine the logistics involved, but some of those vehicles can be diverted to those areas that need vehicles, right? So those dealers that are now in recovery mode and need vehicles, there actually are vehicles that can be supplied there, but they're kind of diverted in that pipeline. That pipeline would be before they got to another dealership.
So do you think that this will affect our inventory by any means? Will we lose, if they're like, hey, we're going to get these many, or are we going to end up losing some of the stock that we might have had previously coming in?
Mohawk Honda won't really lose any inventory or what they call allocation. Okay. Allocations are what are given to the dealer per month. But that's based on what was sold the prior month. Okay. It's kind of like a pennies on a dollar type of thing. Gotcha. Even if you had one or two less per month, and every dealer, all 1,073 dealers in the country, had a few less, then that can make up the supply that they need.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Not a big effect at all.
Okay, good, perfect. I guess the other thing that I'm thinking about, and I don't think I've ever seen it here, but people try to end up selling these flooded cars? Is that really a thing, or?
It has been in the past. It
Okay.
has been in the past. And that's a very good question, right? Anytime you hear of any natural disaster, and then you may be in the used car market right thereafter, you might say, geez, am I getting one of the cars that was affected by that?
Right,
Or how does that work? I'm super happy to say that all of the vehicle history reporting data, which would be services like a Carfax report or an auto check, or there's some others, are very, very on top of this. Anytime a vehicle number, which is obviously the kind of the DNA of that vehicle.
VIN?
That's right, the
VIN,
VIN, the vehicle
VIN.
identification
It sounds
number.
so weird saying it like that. No, normally I just say VIN,
Yep.
but VIN, the vehicle identification number.
Yep, absolutely. Anytime that VIN is associated with any recovery efforts, whether that's a tow from an area, or certainly any type of reconstruction or reconditioning or anything like that is done to that vehicle, it's tagged right on there. So there's very, very little chance somebody could get a vehicle that was affected by that's still in operation and not be aware of it.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
good to know.
Yeah, certainly.
So is there any way to double check? Because I know a lot of people be like, oh, I just want to make sure. How would someone check that?
Sure. Well, at Mohawk, I can't speak for everybody, but at Mohawk Honda, all of our vehicles endure a 182-point check. This is the used cars we're talking about. Both used or certified. And within that check, our technicians, our group of professionals, check that vehicle from top to bottom, and literally top to bottom, right? They put it up on the lift. They're underneath the vehicle to make sure that they don't see any signs of prior damage, and certainly any prior floods. Any vehicle that we think even in the least bit could have a possibility of having that, we do not sell to another retail customer at our dealership.
How does flooding affect a vehicle? Do you know any of the specifics on that?
Yeah, in terms of the actual physical effect on the vehicle, certainly if there was what we call significant or severe catastrophic damage to the vehicle, where the water, you can imagine a vehicle, right, and the water level was so high that it covered the motor, that's a problem. That vehicle's not going to be repairable. But if the water level was only 6 inches or 8 inches off the ground, you could certainly tell by looking at any area of the car that was exposed, right? Like the wheels, or even the undercarriage, or if you picture underneath the vehicle, any of those subframes, we can see that.
Okay.
Because any vehicles are steel, right? Mostly steel, and
they are.
They are, right? And
I thought they were plastic.
Yeah, that's right. Anytime, well, some of them are. Anytime that steel is exposed to water, you'll certainly see some oxidation, and we can detect that with our professional eye here. But anybody who's interested in a vehicle from us now or anytime is welcome to accompany our technician and look at their vehicle ahead of time before making a purchase. So that's certainly important for us to explain.
Then if you're watching this and you're like, well, I'm not anywhere close to Mohawk Honda, I'm sure you could find someone around that would be able to help you. You can also check the Carfax, like Mike was talking about. So take a look at those.
Absolutely. And if you're from out of the area and you're interested in a pre-owned vehicle here, to jump subjects here a little bit, we offer. Yeah, that's right. It's the same subject. We offer both photo and video review of a vehicle ahead of time. So if you are coming from out of the area and you say, geez, that's a long trip to look at a car, we're happy to take a video for you and show you exactly what we're talking about.
That's cool.
Need advance in technology, right?
10, 15
Talk about
years
ago.
In technology.
That's right.
And all of that fun stuff.
Absolutely. So, those hurricanes, a big deal. Certainly, again, our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody affected. But the good news is the car business is so resilient. The dealers are so resilient that we know that they're going to come through. Absolutely.
And I mean, we're going to have to be resilient because we got two other topics we have to talk about that are currently fighting us at the moment. And that's the port strike was definitely one of those. And I don't know if we saw an immediate impact. I feel like more along the lines of maybe collisions and different individuals that need parts to fix things might have been more affected, but I'm not sure the actual extent of what happened at that port strike.
Yeah, so
it wasn't as long as we thought it was going to be.
Well, or we hoped. I wouldn't say it was positive. Maybe it was positive for the union that we ended up making, or that they ended up making an agreement with. But certainly, in terms of the effects on the car business, that eastern border and all the way through Texas into the Gulf, that port strike only lasted 3 days. right? Only.
Only 3 days.
However, as I
There's a lot that
click,
happens in 3 days.
there's
I'll tell you that.
and a lot
It's
of
full
money.
72 hours.
Had you heard?
I haven't heard.
On what they say the economic effect per day was when that strike?
No.
It was unbelievable. And I'm looking at Reuters here. Reuters.com is a great source to get some of this economic information. $5 billion a day. $5 billion a day in terms of how that affected the economy with a stop of all those imports.
$5 billion
That's a lot of money, no matter what way you slice it.
No way.
Now, in terms of what that meant to the car business, in terms of what was imported, a lot of the car business parts and vehicles are domestic, so they were in country, so that they weren't affected. However, there were a lot of imports, especially of parts, like you said. So whether that was actually part repair, that might be parts that needed on your vehicle to repair them, or body repair. So that certainly slowed a little bit. We're still seeing some effects of that slowing, because you imagine that even though it was only 3 days, that effect is like a ripple.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It ripples because everything was pushed back.
Yep, everything's
3 days.
pushed back. So now you got that.
Absolutely. So that probably put the biggest dent in customer service and waiting more than anything. So those 3 days.
$5 billion. I can't. Man, that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. It is a lot of money. And the next topic, not to hijack Nate here, but
individuals that spend a lot of money.
That's right. Politics, right? Politics. And, we don't need to get crazy political. However, we all know that there's an election coming up.
Yes.
In less than 60 days.
And how is that affecting us right now? So for anyone who doesn't know, I handle the marketing and advertising. And now, we weren't seeing a lot of disruption when it came to ad buying, and earlier, the first 3 quarters, we didn't see a lot of advertising through politics. It wasn't affecting us. Here in the 4th quarter, we're starting to see a lot more. And now I'm starting to hear a lot more individuals saying, oh, that politician's ad. I just skip over that,
Yeah, the effect is more mindset. Right. If you look at any of the news sources, my friends at CarBiz TV or CBT.com, they have a great take on it. Really, in terms of mindset, when you think of the American public and what's coming up here and the possible change in the White House, people want to feel good about what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Whether they're buying a car, buying a home, or even just spending any money at all.
Right.
They call that measure, they call that consumer sentiment. Right? How does the consumer feel about spending money? So the consumer sentiment, like to Nate's point, has dipped a little bit here coming into the 4th quarter. So it's not necessarily that there's anything bad going on in the economy, but with any level of uncertainty.
People think there is.
Yeah.
Or might.
Might be. We don't know, right? Nobody knows.
Right.
So a lot of times human nature, I know I do this, is if I'm not sure, I just don't do anything.
True.
Right? So it's just a recession a little bit in terms of an action. So there's just less action, a little bit less action. We haven't seen quite a big change yet in the car business, and we haven't seen a big change in Mohawk Honda. However, that's a real thing, and people are maybe hesitant about, do I get a vehicle or not?
Absolutely. And if you're coming on here, you're watching this, you're watching the replay, please throw us some questions that you might have. Maybe you have some questions about what is going on, what's going to happen. A big topic right now, at least for us in the automotive industry, is EVs. And the Prologue has definitely come up behind us. Oh, hey, look, there's a Prologue right there. Has come up significantly. And at Chevrolet, we also have the Silverado EV. We have the Blazer EV, the Equinox EV. When you move up through the GM lineup, you have the Cadillac Lyriq, and you have the Hummer EV. You have all these electric vehicles, Volvos. Everyone's coming out with an EV now. And I believe there was a lot of subsidization for, if you want to buy, we want to get rid of these EV vehicles. We're selling them. People are very hesitant. Let's give them a little incentive to kind of take the risk and jump in full force. And that started with the $7,500 credit. That everyone's like, I can get $7,500 off the vehicle that I want to buy.
The federal tax credit.
Federal tax.
Yep.
Federal tax credit. And then you also had some municipalities jumping in. Vermont, I think, had a humongous incentive for individuals trying to buy vehicles. But now, whatever side you're looking at, like, well, if this candidate gets in, I may not have it. If this candidate gets in, I might still have it.
That's right.
And everything is up in the air, like you're talking about. But let's talk a little bit about the room temperature of EV and what we're seeing right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. If we go back about 6 months, 6 to 12 months, there seemed to have been a little dip in interest in EVs, right? As a consumer, you'd say, right when EVs came out, and certainly Tesla is the market leader. We're not ashamed to say that.
Yeah.
They do a great job.
They've been out for a long time.
They've been out for a long time. That's right. A lot of cars on the road, and they represent almost 50% of the EV sales. At least they did last year for brand new sales. So what had happened was the interest really spiked as this new technology came out, and their vehicles were heavily reliant on AI, right? Automotive intelligence or artificial intelligence. And it was really a neat thing. So big spike. Then all of a sudden, a lot of manufacturers decided to get in that game, right? Super successful. And what happened was the selection then becomes so vast, the consumers actually had so many to choose from, we weren't sure which way to go, right?
Yeah, right.
Do I get a Honda? Do I get a this? Do I get a that? Do I get a Tesla? And so we saw a little bit of a dip in market share. Now, I'm actually glad to say that EV market share has actually increased.
Well, that's good.
Right? So third quarter of 2024, EV market share is now over 8%. It's 8.9%. Last year, all year in 2023, it was just about 7%. So we've seen a big uptick in the amount of EVs being purchased. I attribute that. Yeah, absolutely. I attribute that to the incentives that are available, because ultimately the cost of ownership, or how much you have to spend to not just buy the vehicle, but insure it, put fuel in it, all that kind of thing. With an EV, you have one of those that you don't even need to worry about.
Yeah,
right?
the cost of ownership is so much lower,
It
if you're leasing.
It certainly can be. In addition to the incentives that Nate was talking about with the federal tax credits and the local tax credits or state credits, a lot of the manufacturers have really put a lot of money toward incentivizing, or you're saying subsidizing, that purchase price, which just doesn't do anything but help save people money.
Right.
So all those things together, you see a big increase. 2% market share, by the way, is a huge increase over
crazy.
a certain period of time.
Okay, all right. There's some things that I don't understand, but when I think about it, I like to kind of educate, because I think there's a lot of hesitation, because there's a lot of hesitation. Like my wife, she's like, I'm not going all EV. I would go hybrid. I would go plug-in hybrid.
Okay.
I'm like, but why, right? My question is why? Because there's a lot of individuals that don't drive often. They don't. You're just a homebody. You only drive to work and back. I believe the stat is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the average person only drives about 40 miles a day.
That's correct.
And an EV now, I've been here long enough to know the clarity that came out for Honda. You had 40 miles and a hybrid. You had a hybrid, but you had a plug-in hybrid. So you had the ability to drive 40 miles, and they really did that because that was the fact that the average person doesn't drive that long. And with an EV, that range anxiety might come from actually, if you had to drive, to Texas or, but the stat is, especially for the Prologue, you could literally drive to Boston and back on a single charge.
That's right.
That's it.
Wouldn't even need to stop.
You wouldn't need to stop. You wouldn't have to charge, and that's a good deal, right? Because that's what we're really looking for. And you just plug it in at the end of the day, and you'll never have to worry about it. I'm looking for my phone, but my phone's used as a camera. Nobody goes to their phone like, oh, my phone is going to die because you didn't realize you had to charge it, right?
That's right.
Everybody knows they had to charge the phone. And I bet you if you're watching right now, you're like, yeah, my phone's probably around 50%, right? Just because you look at it so often, during the day how long you've had it on for. And you're like, yeah, I could probably gauge how much battery's left. Like, I'm pretty sure my phone probably has like 36% right now.
Now, it's funny you say that. I always ask people this, right? Your phone, are you like, it gets to 50% and you charge it right away, or do you let that get down to 5 or 10%. What kind of charger are you?
I'm a every night.
Every night. Me too.
Well, because especially now, I love the feature on my iPhone that the MagSafe. Like, I have it on my bed, right? So if I snap it to my charger, which is it's just holding my phone. It comes up with that nice screen at night. It's red. I can see the time. I can see the date, and that's like all I need. But it's also charging. It's also charging my watch at the same time.
Okay.
You know, so that's how I charge.
I understand. Yeah, I think probably the audience has a lot. Probably go either way on that, right? Some people are as soon as I see it's less than 100%, I plug it in, and other people are different.
Let us know in the comments what kind of charger are you, because there's also, because I drive a lot, right? My phone's also plugged in.
Okay.
Right? So I'm using Apple CarPlay all the time. My phone's plugged in, it's being charged. So typically my phone's almost at 100% all the time, because my phone's either in my car, on my stand, or I might be using it to transfer some files because I just shot some video. So my phone's pretty much usually charged.
No, understood. That range anxiety, that's the terminology the industry
Range
uses,
anxiety.
right? Meaning, geez, I don't want to run out of charge, or I don't want to buy an EV or drive one because I might run out. You know, most of us, me included, I'm more of that. My phone gets down to 50% and I charge it right away. So I'd probably be the same way, you know, when I drive an EV long distance. But the other thing that's really been a huge improvement industry-wide, not just with Honda, but certainly including Honda, is the availability of local chargers.
Yep.
Right. So if anybody wants to look on our website has a neat feature where you can see all the local charges around Mohawk Honda, and most of the apps have the same thing.
And it's funny you say that. So we just had a recent influencer, Saucy Sriracha. Follow her on Instagram. She's gonna be posting a video, but she took our prologue for the day, and I didn't convert her yet. We're still working on it. So Saucy, I'm watching you. Your prologue is coming for you. Teal. I know what color you're looking for.
That's a great color. I love that color.
She loves that color. So she was talking to me, and she's saying, there's a lot more chargers than I thought there were. There's a lot more places to charge it than I thought there were. I was like, I know. But people still have, I think it's because if you're not looking for them, you don't see them.
That's right.
I see them everywhere. I'm like, and a lot of the times, I like to tell people, if you have to charge your car, it's actually going to bring you closer to the building, because they don't want to. Most people don't want to pay for the electrician bill to take it and throw it across the parking lot.
Yep.
So chances are you're going to get closer to wherever you're going, whether it's a restaurant or grocery store or you name it. And that's just one small perk, and they're constantly being increased, and you know, there's so many places to charge now.
There's a lot of places to charge, including Mohawk Honda.
Honda.
With our superchargers, we
shameless
have,
plug.
That's right, shameless plug. The Prologue, which obviously I have the most experience with, it's we have some right outside here, is just an absolutely incredible vehicle. It's really nice to get that latest and greatest in terms of technology. The integration that AI has in these vehicles, the ability to have the assistant right there on the dash and be able to do everything in a hands-free mode is really, really neat. And just it's nice. It's like that, what's now, iPhone 16, 17?
16,
I don't know what
yeah.
it is,
I mean, next year it'll be 20, who knows? They like to skip things, you know, make their own names up. So there's all that.
Absolutely. But talking about cost of ownership, right? Obviously, fuel, don't need any fuel in that EV.
No fuel.
Right, for sure. If you get a brand new Prologue, another shameless plug, Honda includes in your purchase a couple different options for charging, including an actual charger or a credits for charging. So depending on each person's situation, I know I certainly understand some people live in a single family home where maybe a level 2 charger is something that you can install yourself or get installed.
Right.
Or some other people don't have that, right? And they may park in more public parking. And so those credits would be super useful to use at work or wherever you travel. So.
And I feel as if most EV vehicles now come with a charger if you want it.
Yes.
I don't know all of them, but for Honda and Chevrolet, they do come with a charger, and I don't know if they still do at Chevrolet, but they were working to help you get it installed in your garage or wherever you want to put it. They would give you credits for an electrician. They had some contractors and things like that. And another good thing is that me personally, I would probably run the line myself because I just know how to do that.
Okay.
It's just a washer. You know, you just buy the right Romex and you tap it in. I think I like a few extra ports in my breaker, and you just run the line right into the garage. You'll be fine.
I may rely on a pro for that. Good for you. Or you'll come to my house and help me do it. But all of that goes into cost of ownership, right?
Right.
So super important, and something that we advocate at Mohawk Honda is that certainly the price of the vehicle, whether it's new, used, an EV, or it's an ICE vehicle, super important how much you pay for the car, but also just as important, how much does it cost you to insure that car? Right? In terms of actually vehicle insurance, very important part.
So shameless plug, we have a new series coming out, videos about to drop with Northeastern Insurance and our Mohawk Collision Center. And we are going to actually be talking about the cost to insure an EV, and it's not what you think it is.
In a good way.
In a good way.
It's not what we think is in a good way, which is really neat. And the other thing that's really good on that EV topic, that last part of that cost of ownership is maintenance, right? In terms of, most of us are used to, I know I'm used to getting oil changes and all that kind of thing, where there's no oil changes on your EV, right? So you don't have that expense for sure. And it's actually a much more simple visit to our service department. And I'm super proud to say that Mike Healy and Mike Malone and the team in our service department, with all of our Honda certified, Master Tech certified Honda technicians, are ready and willing to take a look at your Prologue or any EV, and they are certified in repairing anything that goes wrong with those, because obviously there's still some things that need to be kept up on the EVs.
Well, we talked about a lot: hurricanes, port strikes, all the fall foliage, politics, and this is just the setup. This is just the first. This is episode 000 of Mohawk Table Talk. This is our first introduction to what we're going to be doing here every week, Tuesday, 12:30. Make sure you put your reminder in, and this is it. This is the start of a great thing.
It sure is. It's beautiful. We look forward to it, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
All right, we'll see you next Tuesday, 12:30, here on Mohawk Honda's page, Mohawk Auto Group's page, and YouTube, wherever you're going to consume that content.